Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 40. With us is award-winning illustrator and storyteller Hannah England of StudioHannah.com.
Hi.
Welcome. So she's here to talk to us of all things illustration, digital and traditional, and maybe we'll have her talk a bit about her upcoming graphic novel, Lampblack, which, according to your website, is supposed to be coming out in 2020, right?
Yeah.
It's still coming. It's still where there. It's still in the works. Yes, and we'll talk a bit about that later. And also one of your we'll talk about your Patreon page as well. That is almost a lot of dedication towards that upcoming book you're working on there. So thank you, Hannah. I've been a fan of your YouTube channel. Very successful YouTube channel. Everybody check that out. It's Studio Hannah, and some great. And I got to say the personality behind it and how you edit these things. It's so fun about this. There is definitely a brand, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well about as an artist goes, how the different hats an artist must wear and all that kind of fun stuff. So many hats. So before we get started, for some of those listeners out there, and also some of the viewers of the show that might not be familiar with your background, do you want to kind of do an introduction, kind of give people a quick background on how you got into illustration and storytelling as well?
Yeah. So I've always been a drawer. I've always been an artist. And I've always also really enjoyed storytelling. So I've done writing on the side, but I feel like whenever I could choose between writing something that was in a story in my head versus drawing it out, my first inclination was always like picking up a blank piece of paper and a pencil and drawing the characters or the places and things like that. And they went hand in hand growing up, but I did do more, I think, marketing, if that's what you can call being a kid and being like, look at my sketchbook of my drawings than I did of my writing. And so when I went to college, I sort of knew I want to do children's books, and I could just illustrate them, but I'd like to write and illustrate them. But in college, the only illustration, like official illustration class, was within the graphic design major. And in order to get into the graphic design major, you had to take 3 graphic design classes and then build a portfolio and then be accepted into the program. And you had 2 chances to be accepted into the program, or they were just like, nope, sorry, you can't try again. Fortunately, I did get in. And I was really just going to take that one illustration class and then go back to being a drawing and painting major and just doing fine arts for the rest of the way. But I realized that even though there was only the one illustration class, illustration and graphic design really go hand in hand with each other. And I realized that I didn't want to just know how to draw pretty pictures for children's books. I wanted to know how to lay them out on the page well and how to understand the publishing industry and how books are created. And so it was really helpful continuing in graphic design for that. But I was also, my teachers wanted me to be a well-rounded graphic designer, that being my major. And so I think as I continued on, I did plenty of illustration-based projects, but I also was sort of told like, oh, you need to also know how to use photography or do graphic designs that are only using, wait, did I say typography or photography? They wanted me to use both of those things. And they didn't tell me not to use illustration, because they encouraged me to do it. But there were definitely some classes where I was like, of the 5, big projects for the year, like 4 of them would be illustration. And my teacher would be like, maybe you should do one that uses like photography or something. Maybe that would be good. Which again was helpful because I needed to know how to do those things. But I did sort of slowly almost forget that I wanted to be a children's book illustrator. And I started fully going in for like, I'm a graphic designer and I'm going to live in a city and work at a boutique design studio making beautiful logos for Fortune 500 companies or whatever. And then I did live in a city and work at a boutique design studio making logos, not for Fortune 500 companies, but for, big groups. A lot of them were like medically based, ones, which doesn't sound interesting, I think, but like they were fun to work on in a lot of cases. But living there and that particular job didn't really work for me. Like I wasn't very happy being there. So I moved to a smaller city, which suited me a lot better. And I got a job as a in-house designer. So I work on catalogs and things like that, which to my graphic design major in college self would have sounded like torture. But the people that I work with are like really super nice and I like working with them. So even though it's not as like of a creative job as like the things that I usually like to do, it's more layout design, which is still creative, but it's, you know, a different type of creativity. Like I really like being there, and it's also sort of given me more mental space. When I get home, I feel more like I've done my job, I've done a good job, you know, I can relax and do my own thing now. What is my own thing? I like illustrating and I really want to do children's books and graphic novels and things. How did I forget that? So I feel like since then, in the years since college, I've been focusing more on illustration, taking online classes, joining forums like the svslearn.com forums and stuff so that I could talk to other illustrators, people who are either in the same boat as me, kind of learning how to be an illustrator, or people who were already published and could help me figure out, you know, how to navigate all of that. And I feel now very much more confident in my ability to, you know, be an illustrator and make the work to become published more than I am. You know, I've done jobs, but I want to, you know, I want to do those children's books that I write and illustrate, and it's going to take time, or novels like Lampblack. And it's, I'm not sure how I'm going to wrap this part up. I was just like, and in conclusion.
So let me ask you this: based on, because you went, so your art school was you graduated almost around about 10 years ago, correct?
Yeah, it was 2012.
Okay. So would you, so now eight years on, would you recommend somebody that is 18 now to definitely go to art school, or would you say, based off of what you said earlier, that you've learned a lot since then as a lifelong learner, would you still recommend like also the investment into going into an art school?
It depends on what you need. And I say that as somebody who was homeschooled in like middle school and high school. I knew a lot of people who were very much like, everybody should be homeschooled or everybody should go to public school. And I was very much like, it depends on what you need. You know, some people need that the type of structure that school has, and other people need the type of a different type of structure. You know, I was able to learn things that my parents based around art a lot of the time. Like a lot of my history assignments, say my parents knew that I liked drawing, so they would have me do a lot of history assignments that featured drawing, and that made me pay more attention, and it was just a better situation for me. But both of those are valid ways to go. So I would say the same thing for art school. I think if you are the type of person that learns better in a class with other people physically around you, hard to do in COVID times, understandably, but if you need that type of environment, then going to school can really help. Because even if you're getting a free education by finding videos online, or very cheap education by finding courses and things that you can take online, if you're not able to focus on it, and if you aren't learning as much because you don't have that class structure, then it's not really going to help you very much. And then vice versa, if you're very good at learning on your own, then you really can. Like the illustration world and the graphic design world, there's a lot of information about it online, and you don't necessarily have to pay, you know, college prices in order to get a good quality education. It is harder to find a mentor, though, if you don't go to college. One of the things that I appreciated about college is the connections that I made, like the networking. I'm still friends with a lot of my classmates and with some of my teachers. I still keep in touch with them. And it's good to have those, because that was the hardest thing for me to figure out when I thought, oh, I'm going to learn about specifically illustration. How do I do this? it was so hard to make connections at first, because you can't just like find a famous illustrator and go be like, hey, I really want to be an illustrator when I grow up. Like, would you want to talk to me for a few hours on the phone about this? So that was difficult to navigate. I don't know if I answered the question or not, but I would say if you need some guidance as to what you should be learning, and you feel like you need that social structure, like of actually being around people, then college can be, the good choice for you. But if you're more self-guided and you're good at, like you sort of understand the structure of the things you should be learning, and you know the order that you need to be going in, then it is absolutely possible to get a very good education online as well.
So that you brought up a good point about our school, at least gives you that hands-on, that mentorship where you're almost forced into a situation of networking and collaboration, where to learn more things online, you have to have that personality of being a self-starter, like in order to do that. Do you how would that affect right now where as you mentioned, like people are now doing a lot of things online now? What are some replacements of that networking that people can do? You mentioned one group. What was that called?
SVS Learn.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What is that?
It's an online school, actually. Online school, in that they have a lot of educational content classes you can take. I think they have a subscription structure where you pay like $10 a month and you can just access all of the classes during that period. Or you can buy individual classes. It was started by Jake Parker and Will Terry and Lee White, who are all illustrators. And if you're part of that group, then there are really good forums that are actually pretty active. Like you can ask for feedback on things, you can give feedback on things, talk about the illustration industry, and get a lot of good advice from people, which is really great. So that's one place that you can go. There are probably, I'm not like somebody that uses Reddit all that often. I just find memes on there sometime and laugh at them. But there's probably, Reddit forums and other places that I don't know about where illustrators and authors come together and talk about those types of things. And that's part of the networking, is finding the people who have the information that you need.
And so where you are, where you are today now, you have you've as you say, you got some you're now a professional freelance illustrator. This is like, so the people that might be listening or listening or watching this is like, Hannah, how did you get to this point? What were what would be some of the advice that you would give some new illustrators that are doing that work, to say, how do I start, how do I put myself out there? How do I start getting contracts? How did you do that?
Well, I can definitely answer the how did I do that part, but it's going to be very individual for different people. So right, sure. I'll answer that, and if I can find some sort of broad thing from it, then I'll say it. But I think I started being a professional, like being paid for my illustration work, when I was 17, and it was actually kind of thanks to my mom, because she read this gardening magazine called Green Prints. And I don't know if she saw it on the website or in the magazine itself, but they were kind of putting out a call for illustrators and writers to contribute. It's kind of like a Reader's Digest style magazine. It's like stories. Some of them are very serious. Some of them are very quirky and silly. And they all have little black and white illustrations alongside them. And so she was like, oh, you should totally try out for this. And I was like, I am not a good enough illustrator to be published in anything. But I tried anyway. And the editor hired me on to do a story. And then I've done stories, I think, quarterly every year, pretty much ever since. I've only missed like a handful of them because I enjoy doing them. And that's kind of what got me started. I think I don't think the editor knew how young I was either until like maybe a year or two later. He was like, oh, wait, you're in college? How old are you? And I was like, But after that, it was just a matter of making good work and making sure that the people who would want to use that work, like want to hire me for it, could see it. So that would include putting my work up on like DeviantArt back in the day, on my own website. Once I got my own website, we were required to do that in college. We had to make a website for a portfolio of our work. And that really kind of lit a fire under me to start making a more cohesive style and understand what I wanted to do as an illustrator and an artist. And I guess after that, there was a lot of word of mouth, like my mom's friend might need an illustration. My mom would tell her about it, and then I would do a good job for my mom's friend. And then my mom's friend might have a cousin who wanted to have an illustration done, and she'd be like, oh, well, this girl that I know did this illustration for me, and she did a really good job, so maybe you should hire her. And then that cousin would hire me, and then maybe that cousin knows somebody who owns a business and needs a logo, and she's like, well, I know this girl who does logos. So there's a lot of word of mouth going on there, and that kind of goes back to who you know, or I guess it's not really who you know, it's like who knows you. Because I know a lot of artists, or at least I know of them, I follow them online, but if somebody doesn't know about me, then they can't reach out to me for an opportunity with something. Like you found me, did you find me through YouTube, or was it through something else?
Yeah, it was through YouTube, yeah. And I noticed that a lot of and as you mentioned, like Will Terry and some of the other ones that I've always followed too.
Yeah. So there you go. It was like me. I put stuff out on YouTube because I was like, somebody might find me on YouTube and be interested in working with me or doing something. You found me on YouTube and you said, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? So.
and here we are today.
The end. Roll credits.
And so that point of like, so that advice is that, and you kind of talk about this in one of your previous YouTube videos, talking about how to network while being shy, is you just have to put yourself out there. And one of the things you did bring up in there as well is like, don't be, well, it's hard to say, don't be like, and you say like, don't be self-conscious about something that people probably will not even notice about it as well. And so, and another piece too, is that it's, from the branding perspective is, do you have to be specific on, because there's so much social media out there. Do you have to be specific on what you want to concentrate on, whether it be like, Twitter or Instagram, or you mentioned DeviantArt or Facebook or YouTube? Do you kind of spread yourself out to all of that? Or do you want to, because right now you your audience is YouTube and Instagram, correct?
Instagram, yeah. I've been told that it's a good idea to spread yourself out over a lot of different platforms because it makes you more visible to more people. But I get very tired doing that. And I tried having a lot of different social media platforms for a while, and I would find that, I haven't posted anything on Behance for like a year because I just forget that it exists. So why do I even have it? And I narrowed it down to Instagram and to YouTube because those are the things that I tend to go to the most whenever I'm looking for creative inspiration or new people to follow. Instagram, because it's very visually heavy, it's a great place for artists to share visual work. And YouTube, because I consume so much YouTube content, it sort of feels like a little online home for me. And so before I had my own channel, I was like, I'm just sort of like lurking in the bushes of YouTube and watching other people do things. And when I started making my channel, I was like, okay, now I'm like peeking out of the bushes. People can kind of see me, but I'm still definitely like hiding over here. But going to live streams and things of artists and seeing what they were talking about and being able to interact with them and ask questions was always really valuable to me. And I really like teaching people about not just art, but also about like how to be more confident if you are a shy person. Like I was very shy when I was young. If I could have looked forward into the future and be like, oh, you're being interviewed for a podcast, I would have just died right there because that would have terrified me. And now I'm like, it's fine. But wait, where was I going? I lost my train of thought.
Just like your Pow Pow video.
Oh, what?
No, we're talking about. Now I gotta try Pow Pow. I can't get him here in Vermont. I don't know what's going on. But no, I think you're. I can edit this part out when you're going to do it.
Nah. Mistakes are part of life. Who needs editing?
Yeah. So no, I think you're talking about you're talking about where you had the social media pieces, what you're sticking to and stuff. Was that it?
Yes. And I remember putting kind of a pin in my brain at one point where, I was talking about like, it's who knows you
right
before. Some of the online connections that I have now are because I went on to lots and lots of artists' live streams and asked them questions and got really good answers from them. And eventually, like, it's always really fun when you join a lot of live streams and then an artist recognizes your name and they're like, oh yeah, you come to my things all the time. I'm like, they know who I am. So that always makes me really happy. But I would do that a lot. And like a handful of these people are like friends of mine online now, which is awesome. And I kind of wanted to do the same thing with my channel. I want to create a space where people can come and ask me questions. And if I can give them answers, then I'm really happy to. It really is all about networking. I'm networking to people that are farther along in the journey than I am. And I'm trying to network with people that are not quite as far along in the journey as I am, because I believe in like passing on good things. So I feel like it always just comes back to putting yourself out there in a way where people will know who you are.
And I think a piece of it too is this, to not get lost in the noise as well as is getting a specific brand. Now, your brand itself with it, and this comes down to, as you mentioned earlier about your graphic design background, is that being very deliberate with font and color and theme and all that stuff. How much of your brand of Studio Hana was very deliberate from a marketing perspective or branding perspective, or how much of it was a natural evolution of your art style over the years?
I think when I graduated, when I was still in college, we had self-branding projects. And I think ever since the first self-branding project that I did, I probably have redesigned my logo once a year ever since, until like 2015 or 2016. So I have a lot of old logos that will never see the light of day. I don't know, maybe I'll make a YouTube video about like, look at the evolution of my logos. But I think at the beginning, I was trying to make myself appear a certain way. I had like, I wanted to be quirky, but I also saw all of these super streamlined sans serif font logos by super bougie graphic designers that I admired their work, but it really wasn't me necessarily. Right. And I think that's why I struggled so hard designing one, because I was trying to like fit this square peg of who I am into the round hole of like general graphic design trends and things, and it just wasn't working. And the same thing would happen with colors. I would look at the colors and I would be like, well, what colors do I like? I like pastels. I like very girly colors and things. And I think, well, what if nobody hires me because they don't want girly colors? And I don't know. Everything that I like is like soft and round and cute. I like little stuffed animal Yodas and things like that. I also really like to collect animal skulls and things. So I'm not exactly sure where I belong in the aesthetic. But I'm pretty sure that what I have now is a brand that I stopped trying to portray myself a certain way, and I just went, what do I like? Like who? I don't know. I guess it was letting myself go a little bit. It was not trying to look a certain way, but saying, well, who am I as of right now? And not in a super designy, who am I sort of a way, but I like soft rounded shapes. I like pastel colors. I like mixing things that are a little bit creepy with things that are a little bit cute, and kind of getting to this point that didn't feel professional to me at first, and it bothered me that it didn't feel professional to me, but I was like, I don't care, I'm just going to do what I like. And I think when I started doing what I liked, then that's when people started liking my work more, and I was like proud of the work that I was making. So that was a good way to get around to it. It's definitely harder to do that. I think if you don't have a graphic design background, I think it would be difficult to maybe like pare down to what you like, but maybe not. Maybe it'd be easier. Maybe you don't have all that stuff in your head, messing you up, telling you like this is what graphic design should be, and just sort of making what kind of feels good to you as an artist.
Right. It's almost like, what was it? The Mark Twain quote is that if you always tell the truth, you never have to worry about what lies you said, or something like that. It's almost like if you always stay authentic in your art style, you don't have to worry about appearing disingenuous in a way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one point too, for those that are listening or viewing, definitely check out Hannah's YouTube channel. It is fun. And it's so fun. And then I said, there's an authentic, there's a authenticity. What's the word? Authenticity about it. And I mean, I think that helps, is that knowing that the person that you're, the person you're getting advice from, and like, watching somebody draw is somebody that, as you talked about, you can kind of, create that sense of community. And I think at the point what you just said is that the brand is authentic. The brand that you've kind of created for yourself is authentic. Yeah. And how many times when you actually, when you produce these YouTube videos, you kind of put these funny jump takes and like these funny, like, are those like, have you ever, I can see it going either way. We're like, oh, I shouldn't do that. Maybe should I do it, or should I do it? Or you just do it, put it in. It's like, that's funny. I'm just going to flip that image like that. Or I'm just going to post these like, stream of conscious thoughts that, like, as you write them out there. Like, it's how, I guess, am I asking you a question here? I'm trying to think if I am or not. So from a branding perspective, I guess the question is like, how important is it for somebody to, as a business, is to have to be that jack of all trades to learn editing software, having to learn all this stuff, in this day and age of somebody who is, as I say, in their early 20s, late teens, who are wanting to go into doing illustration stuff? What would be your advice for that
I think, well, in terms of YouTube specifically, if making videos is something that sounds appealing to you and you want to have a YouTube channel, then absolutely go for it. You don't have to start by being a super professional at the beginning. You could just, I've watched videos of people just turning on a camera, talking for a while, turning it off, and then uploading that without doing any editing. And as long as you're saying things that are interesting, people will still watch that. You don't need to do all the editing and stuff. I like the editing for my videos because I find it funny. There are times when I feel like I'm ranting for too long, or that I'm not saying something interesting. And just by putting a little jump cut of like, me not being able to say the word that I'm trying to say or something, it just kind of makes it more obvious, and it makes me giggle. So I'm like, the 2 minutes of me talking about just blah, 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 now have little peppers of like, that was funny, but I'm still trying to say, good, interesting things as well. I feel like that's like all the jump cuts and the crazy things are almost an editing style that I see and enjoy in other people's videos. And so I sort of use that in mine because it's fun. It's fun to watch. I say that for other people's videos. Hopefully it's fun to watch for mine. If though you're not interested in making a YouTube channel, then I don't think that it would serve very well making one, just because you think that it's going to, help with a career, because making the videos is just going to be taking time away from your art in that case. you could be working on an illustration that is great and spending all those hours, you know, making something that you could put up on Instagram or into your portfolio that people would love. And if you are instead making a video that you're not really feeling that happy about making, then that's kind of a waste of time. Of course, if you could do both, if you could make a video about you making the art that's really good, then that's probably the best of both worlds. But I mean, one of the reasons that I don't make a lot of videos is because I don't consider myself a YouTuber. I consider myself an illustrator who sometimes makes YouTube videos. And I could do the, like, you know, putting out a video a week, but it does take hours and hours to, you know, script and film and edit videos like the ones that I make. And I would rather spend that illustrating. So I found a sort of a happy medium where I just make the videos that I want to make and I don't worry too much about scheduling them and things like that. And it does get me followers who are interested in what I'm doing. But I'm not trying to grow my channel like, I gotta get to, you know, 10,000 likes, you guys like and subscribe. I'm more just like, you know, I have something to say today, so here's a video about it. And then I spend the rest of my time, you know, making the work that I'm really interested in, which is illustrating or working on Lampblack, my graphic novel, or just other things.
So talk to us a bit about that. Before we go into Lampblack, I wanted to ask you about, I saw on your website you have Berryberry Forest Volume 1.
Yeah.
It's about a strawberry and a bunny having a baby.
The story behind Berryberry Forest's creation is that, see, what was I doing? It started from one of my live streams that I used to do, where I would ask people on Instagram for, like, to vote on prompts for creating a character design. And then during a live stream, I had to, within like an hour and a half or so, draw that character out. And this particular character was like a strawberry bunny monster that was like bright pink and purple and like tealy colored. And it was just kind of like a cute illustration at the end of it. And I didn't think that much about it. But a year or two later, I was on a polymer clay forum because I have too many hobbies, obviously. And I was just talking to somebody and she was like, "Oh, you have a YouTube channel? Like, what is it?" And so she went and she found that video and she was like, "Oh my goodness, the strawberry bunny is so cute. You should make a polymer clay model of it." And I went, "Oh yeah, that would be kind of cute. I could do that." So I made a polymer clay model of the strawberry bunny. And then I was also at that time kind of getting into a YouTube channel called Craftsman, who I love. Like, everybody go watch the Craftsman right now. It's like Craftsman, but with no T. I must spread the knowledge of the Craftsman. But he does a lot of resin casting and toy making. And so I thought, oh, it would be kind of neat if I took this strawberry bunny thing that I made and turned it into like a toy or a sculpture or something. And so I played around with silicone molds. Again, I have too many hobbies. And I made some little resin casts of this strawberry bunny. But then I was thinking, you know, okay, so I could take this and I could sell this at conventions and things that I go to, but there's no context for it. It would just be like the one toy that I have on my table and that doesn't go with anything. So maybe I should come up with like a little comic or like little illustrations of the strawberry bunny doing cute things so that there's just other merch and it can sort of become a mini intellectual property thing. And so I thought, well, his name's obviously going to be Straw Bunny. He's a strawberry bunny. And then I started thinking, well, what other characters could I maybe illustrate him with? And I thought of Blueberry, who is a blueberry bear, and a couple of other ones that I haven't introduced in like to people yet necessarily, but you just, you know, puns of animals and fruits. And it started getting really weirdly existential in my head. Like, wouldn't it be funny if they were super cute and they looked like these happy little children's characters, but really there was like commentary about being an adult and it being difficult and trying to grow up and things like that. And so I just did like a couple of comics, put them up on my Instagram, just really short little 4-panel comics. Not thinking that anybody would care about it. I was like, it's just kind of for fun. And people really liked it for some reason. So I was like, oh, maybe I should do something with this, and then promptly proceeded to do nothing with it. Besides make like I did print out a little one volume version of like the comics that I had made, and it's just really like train of thought, random little situations with Strawberry Bunny and stuff. And I took that to conventions with the little model that I had made, and I think some stickers and some pins and things like that. And I was like, okay, this feels complete now. This feels like there's a character, there's a story, there's stuff going on. And people really, really, really liked it. And I went, man, I really need to do more with this. And then promptly went home and did nothing with it. So as of right now, I have some resin casts of this character. I have a few, like a handful of comics that I've put into a 1-volume thing. And I like have all these plans in my head, but they keep sort of being pushed aside. And that's like, don't do this, guys. If somebody likes your stuff, if you have something that people like, jump on that and make stuff for it. Because I had an opportunity multiple times with this, and hopefully we'll continue to have opportunities with it to make it, more popular, more marketable. And I tend to like go, oh yeah, people like it, that's really cool, and then get distracted by something. One of my 237 hobbies probably. And but like I still like the idea, the story, and the little characters and stuff that I've come up with. I have like a Spanish speaking character named Avocado, who is a avocado cat. I have like a banana pillar, a banana caterpillar, and in my head he's like kind of snarky and sort of gets on the other character's nerves and shows up when he's least wanted. But just like funny little things that I do want to expand on at some point.
So this could have been good for, so I guess my question also too is that because you can buy Berry Forest Volume 1 on your website. It is there. Yes. So people can own a physical copy of this book. And so it's a 32-page comic book. And right, 32 pages.
I think so, yeah.
And so why, because you always talked about when you were young, always to be a children's book. What made you decide to make it into a comic book and not actually like into like an actual children's book?
It sort of reads like a children's book more than a comic book. Yeah. I think I call it a comic just because of the Scott McCloud definition of what comics are. It's like what I used to have it memorized, but I don't have it anymore. But Scott McCloud's Making Comics book has a really good definition of what comics are, and it's something like visual and something images in sequence. You can see how much I remember. But technically, if you go by his definition, you can probably look it up on Google if you just look up like Scott McCloud definition of comics. But technically, children's books could be considered comics. So sometimes I use that word a little freely. Anything where I'm telling a story and using images as the story is what I love. So it could be children's books, but comics is also something that I kind of got more interested in as an adult because I like the multi-panel storytelling that you can get with comic books.
Right. No, because I know, looking at some of the image, it does really feel like a children's book in a way. And I love, was that one scene on there was like in there, it's like how where did strawberry bunny come from? Yeah, don't ask or something like that. Don't.
I've had some interesting responses to that particular one at conventions.
So I guess the question too, and you talked about it earlier about in a way it's especially this being a career and a passion for you is illustration and storytelling. Do you feel specifically as we where we are now in 2020 that we've seen, I think, especially in this year, we've seen how important artists are now. It's like everything, music, art, stories, books, comics, everything that's happening. That do you feel that this is a time where we've actually seen the type of work that you do almost highlighted on how important it is for artists to be heard and artists to an investment into arts right now?
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, there's always going to be those people that don't respect the arts at all, and they're not going to see the value of it. But when I think about the positive cultural things that have happened during 2020, they're all like video games and movies and books and things. They're all art, things that are entertaining people during these times. Like I know I got really big into Animal Crossing early on because like it wasn't a franchise that I had ever played before. And a few of my friends and family members were like, "Oh yeah, we like this game. It's really cute." And I was like, I don't know. But I got it because I thought, yeah, it would be something to entertain me. And it was really cute and I really enjoyed it. And it was kind of like this very chill way to spend my time when I was like unsure how else to spend my time. And, video games to me are art. You've got not even just the visual parts of the game, but the writing and the way that you guide people through the game and the way that you keep people interested by coming up with new checkpoints during the game so that people are invested in continuing to play it. Like I'm fascinated by video games. Actually, I love video games. The funny thing is like less so playing them and more so like how are games designed and how do you make them? Like I want to open up the video games and understand how they work. And I feel like I did that with comics too. Like I didn't really read comics growing up, and when I discovered that comics was such an interesting medium for storytelling, it wasn't that I became an avid comics reader. Like I definitely have which direction? I definitely like collect comics, but I don't have a giant collection of them, and I do tend to go for more like independent artists and things. I think because I like supporting other independent creators, but also because they tend to tell interesting stories that I just connect to a little bit more. But it was partially about I enjoy reading the comics, but a lot of it was just I want to understand how this works. Like, what is the magic behind seeing a page and it's all still imagery and you're just reading words, and yet somehow you're putting all of this action into my head. I can see the characters moving almost like they're being animated. I can hear their voices like they're talking to me. Like, how do you do that? How do you make it? And I really wanted to learn how to do that, which is why I like to why I'm trying to make comics and things like that now, because like having delved into how it works, it just fascinates me. I want to be able to tell those stories and come up with good morals and lessons and things that people can learn from reading the stories. I feel like a lot of like who I am came from reading books as a kid and then being like, this protagonist was amazing and awesome in this situation. I want to be like that when I grow up. And that hasn't changed as an adult. If I watch a good movie or play a good video game or read a good story that has characters in it that I can sort of, still look up to and admire for the things that they do, then that's valuable. There's great value in that kind of thing.
So do you feel like almost there's a way that artists now almost this year kind of have an obligation to create as compared to previous
I don't want
years?
to say an obligation to create, mostly because I know that there are a lot of people who, when you put that kind of pressure on them, it'll make them not want to create. And a lot of people that I know have been having trouble creating too, because when they're so stressed about things that are happening, it's really difficult for them to, sit down and make things. I'm the kind of person that tends to create when I'm feeling stressed, especially illustration. Like if I'm not feeling well, I can usually still draw. If I'm like really sad or upset about something, I can usually draw. I think I talked about this in my latest video, actually. Like I'll draw it out.
Right.
I'll get it out of my system by drawing, maybe not literal representations of what I'm upset about, but things that represent it in my head. So it purges the worry and the concern from my mind and really, helps me feel better at the end of it. I do think that if people can be creating right now, though, like if you have an opportunity to, then using the extra time that you might have to create is definitely a good idea. Like I've been creating so much more this year than I have in previous years because like working from home, I don't have to worry about my commute to work, and a lot of social events have been canceled. So instead, I'm like drawing instead, I'm making things instead. And some unexpected things that I don't think I would have made if I hadn't had that space to just sit back and think like, wow, things are interesting right now. What do I want to do with my time? So I don't know if I would say obligation, just because of what I said before. Like, people should create when they feel like they can create, and that's different for everybody. But I do think it's an opportunity rather than an obligation. And if you can take that opportunity, then I would suggest doing that. It's a good. We have a lot of, like I said, space before. We have a lot of space right now for creating, and it's a good thing to take advantage of that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as they say, like, especially when, people stayed at home, just like that opportunity to, take all that list of things that you like, get that to-do list, your list of dreams you wanted to do, of work to do, and, hammer that out. And I have like so many other questions for us, and I gotta figure out. So I want us to talk a bit. I might have to have you come back on again some other time and talk about your style and how you write, how you draw digital or that stuff. But we only got 10 minutes left, and I realized that I wanted to really talk to you about learn more about Lampblack. Now, is that the name after the pigment? Is that where you got the name?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're the first person to get that right off the bat.
Nice. I do my research here, Hannah.
Nice.
So
it has some other meanings too. Like it is based off of the pigment. I'm doing the entire comic in black and white, and part of that is somewhat metaphorical to the story. Like there's some discussion of like who you are as a person. There's a lot of exploration about like figuring out where you should be in life. And I feel like sometimes when people are considering that for themselves, they see it in almost a binary. It's like, what should I be doing? There's a right choice and there's a wrong choice. And if I make the wrong choice, everything is just going to be messed up forever. When really there's a lot more, wiggle room and gray area. But the comic itself it's not an autobiography, but it is strongly influenced by who I was and how I felt after I graduated from college. Like my friend group in college, people I'd become really close with, they were like my second family while I was living there, kind of became this diaspora that just vanished from my life. And we would talk to each other online and stuff, but that's not the same as calling somebody up and saying, hey, do you want to go grab pizza tonight? It's very, very different when they live 2 states away or something. And going back home for a little while before I, got my first big girl job and like went off and stuff, was hard too, because all my friends that I'd had pre-college were also gone. Like they'd moved away, they'd been doing other things. And I was very lonely and very unsure. Up until you graduate from college, it's like every 4 years, you kind of know what you're doing. You're like 4 years of being an infant, 4 years of being in elementary school, 4 years of being in middle school, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college. And then what do? You don't know. You're kind of up to, for the first time in your life, you have to be the one that's choosing, what do I do for the next 4 years or for the next 50 years or for the next however many years you're alive? Like, it's terrifying to hit that point and not know what the answer is, and nobody can give you that answer. Like, you have to come up with it yourself. And there's not a whole lot of preparation for that, I think. I kind of wish that in high school and college, maybe, that we talked more about what do you do afterwards, rather than just, we're just going to get you graduated and then, after that, whatever happens. And so I was having a really hard time dealing with all of that, especially because I've always been a very like A+ student, high achiever type. And so suddenly I was like, what am I achieving? What, I can't get a grade for just like existing. What am I supposed to do? And I was very confused about like, okay, who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to be in the world? And this character came into my head who was not me, but was sort of going through those same questions and trying to figure those things out. And I didn't know what to do with her. I didn't know what her name was. I just sort of was like, okay, she's a proxy for me in some story that I might write in the future. And I started visioning what would depression and anxiety look like as like a physical character. And I came up with one. It's just sort of like this inky blackness. Like, what does it feel like to feel depression hit you or something? And the funny thing is that that character actually became like a good character rather than like a bad character that represented depression. But that's sort of what it started with. And he kind of manifests as this tattoo-like character that kind of adheres itself to her skin, and it's the story itself is sort of a superhero story, and so it's about the two of them learning to be symbiotic to each other, at the same time that it's a story about them like figuring out who they are in the world by themselves and how they're supposed to navigate things. But that's kind of where the Lampblack word came from, because I was like, what is a good title for something that represents like the darkness and the light that can be in our lives and represents those two characters. And lampblack, like you said, is the name of a pigment that comes from like the soot that comes from like oil lamps. It makes a very, very, very dark black color. But I liked that word also had the word lamp in it and the word black. So it's like you're talking about light and dark at the same time, which might be a little corny when I'm saying it out loud. It always sounds more corny when I explain these things out loud than when I'm saying them in my head. So, I mean, that's the origin of the name. I feel like I was rambling a little bit there. You gonna bring me back?
Right, sure. So like just talking about just kind of like you started talking about the origin of how you came about it, but where, and this is exclusive to your Patreon right now if people want to read this, correct?
Yeah, currently.
Right.
I've changed it up a little bit since I first started my Patreon, because originally it was only going to be Lampblack, like all Lampblack all the time. And I realized that was causing me to actually feel a little bit stressed about creating Lampblack, because it felt like I was creating it to put on Patreon rather than just creating a good story. So my Patreon still will get previews and information about Lampblack before anybody else does. But it also does include other things that I'm interested in, other artworks that I might be working on, little behind the scenes things in my studio. Like at some point, now that I've moved, I'm going to, do like a little walkthrough of like, here's my new space and here's my new studio and stuff. And I'll be putting that up on my Patreon first. And yeah, I'm not going to be putting Lampblack online anywhere until I've shown it to my Patreon supporters. So I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put it out by like give them a big chunk, like here's the first chapter, or if I want to just do it like a few pages a week until we get to the end of the chapter or not. But and I'm not sure how I'm going to stagger that with like how early do my patrons get it versus when I put it online. But yeah, there's other fun little perks too.
Yeah, I saw that you have a really good Patreon page as well, where you have like 4 tiers, and as I say, and like it's in a lot of it, as I said, that's the thing. If you look at where Lampblack is, it's only because you did mention that you were earlier you were talking about putting it on Webtoons, but now you're not doing that, correct? Or
I probably will eventually. So right now where I'm at is I want to publish it. I want to have it in paper form someday, but I'm not sure if this is something that I want to self-publish or if this is something that I want to try to find like an agent or something for. I'm leaning towards self-publishing just because this is my first comic and I just want to have something made.
Right.
And I don't want to have to rely on, getting a publisher or something for that. Putting it on Webtoons though, is still something I'm interested in, but it would work like my patrons would get it like a week or 2 before I would put it up on Webtoons. So they would be reading it first. I even kind of want to ask them questions about the story too, like get their advice, their behind the scenes advice. Like, what do you guys think about this chapter? Like, does this dialogue work? So it could change too from when it shows up on Patreon to when it shows up on Webtoons or like anywhere in public, which is one of the fun things about Patreon. I think people know that it's not a like you don't have to offer finalized things all the time. It's like they're part of my little club, and they're like looking over my shoulder at what I'm creating when I'm creating it. Things that I wouldn't share with Instagram or just the world in general, but they're there kind of watching along as I'm making it, which is fun.
Right. Yeah. And would you think about once it's finalized, is this something you, as you said, it's self-published, would you do it through like Kickstarter? Would you raise funds through Kickstarter or Indiegogo?
That's the one that I'm leaning towards. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've known some people who have successfully funded comics through Kickstarter before. Jason Brubaker, for one. I own a lot of his comics. I show up on his live streams occasionally, but he's done some Kickstarter comics, and I've backed them because I really like his work a lot. And I like the idea of crowdfunding. I think it's kind of fun to make something and then have the team of people who are like there and ready and want to help you make the thing as well. That's why I back Kickstarters. I like seeing what people are making and being like, you know what, I believe in you. I believe that you can do this. So like, here's this money, go live your dream, make the thing happen. And of course it's nice getting perks too.
Right. And a previous, a comic book podcast was talking about that. Like Kickstarter is basically free market research.
Mm-hmm.
You can see what works, what doesn't. I mean, and as you say, you create a community as well for that as well. So it's,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we are at the hour mark.
Oh man.
Hannah. So this was, this was great. So listen, I'd love to have you come back on and talk to us a bit about, Lampblack,
mm-hmm.
when it comes out of it, and really kind of, when you get that Kickstarter ready and it's, and however you do it, and have you come back on and talk to us more about that. It looks fantastic. I've been, skimming through your Patreon, pages through there, looking at the work and just reading more about it. And as I say, I'm a big fan of your YouTube channel. So please, so where can people find you?
So I am on Instagram and Facebook as Studio Hana Art. I'm on YouTube as Studio Hana. You can just look me up, Studio Hana. I am on Patreon, I think also as Studio Hana. There might be an art at the end of that one too, actually. It's confusing when I want all of my social media to match, and then you find out that like Studio Hana on Instagram is somebody who collects shoes, and you're like, okay. So some of them do have art at the end of them just because it helps a little bit. I think it is Studio Hana Art on Patreon. I should know this off the top of my head. I'm very bad at pitching for my shelf. My shelf. I'm not a very good shill for my own work. But yeah, that should be all of them. Right. I think I said before we like officially went live that I'm very bad at the self-promotion part of it.
Yeah. So, well, thank you very much. And so I look forward to, as we say, seeing more of your, seeing more of Lampblack, but also volume 2 of Berry Forest, because you put volume 1 on it. So there must be a volume 2.
I know. Oh yeah. I've got a whole story in mind for it that I do want to make.
All right.
He's a weird little bunny. I like him.
But this is, you got the giving tree, and then you got your famous cat lamp thing like behind you too, and Baby Yoda. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of these little ones. I can give a shout out to a creator called Shlee Kawaii for those. She does all these really tiny, very, very cute little creatures, little toys of things. Like I've got a bunch of other ones over here too, but they're so cute. Every time I see her stuff in a on sale online or in a convention or something like that, I'm just like, I want them. What do I not have yet?